Listen, Christmas carolers.
You want to throw some eggnog on them?
Welcome to week 74 of Misha and Dianne Watch Santa Barbara.
Hello.
We just got back from dinner at the Keg, and who was sitting next to us at the next table? KJ Appa, better known as Archie Andrews on Riverdale. Here's what he had. No, just kidding. And we also watched Land yesterday. Kelly, can't remember her name. Robin Wright's movie. I give it a thumbs up.
Mm-hmm.
Kirk watches Gina burn the items that she had gotten from Brandon's teddy bear. And as Gina leaves the living room, we see Kirk is now no longer outside the window, but he's inside. He must have done quite a sprint around the house through the front door and out around the back to hide behind one of those pillars. But he runs into the living room once Gina's out of sight and uses the poker to pull out the burning wig, dress, and as we see later, also Gina's diary. That was the other item that we couldn't identify yesterday.
And we actually saw a really unique view of the set in this particular sequence, a hallway that I really don't think we had ever seen before.
It's the camera, straight shot of the camera down the far right side of the atrium. So on the left side there were several pillars, and on the right are the entrances to the 2 or 3 rooms there, one of which is the living room. Now, I think maybe they cheated usually, and it's a lot narrower because we just sort of see it in the background, and maybe they moved the pillars over to make it look wider. We do know that right at the front where the camera was placed, we have once or twice seen a telephone, and that's also where that low sort of, I don't want to say bench, it seems to be, maybe it's a little flower bench or something, but sometimes people sit there and talk. Yeah, so it's always cool to see a new angle of the Catwell atrium. Gina realizes that destroying the evidence isn't enough because someone still knows her secret. So she tells Cece she's going to leave town with Brandon. And she says, I hope you rise out of your bed and make everyone's lives miserable like you used to. And she doesn't see it, but Cece's hand clenches on his sheets once again. Will we get that Christmas Eve miracle Kelly was hoping for? Eden and Cruz are still dancing. And Eden says she's sorry she hurt Cruz. And she tells him he'd be better off with Santana. He questions her about Kirk's exact whereabouts while she was in her father's room. And she says that he was downstairs, but when she woke up, he was standing over her. Kirk reads Gina's diary, and in it she wonders why Kirk doesn't tell Eden if he suspects that Gina is the one who pulled the plug. So this is interesting. That actually gets Kirk to think about it. And he thinks to himself, well, I will tell her, but just not right now.
Not yet.
I think he's thinking he needs to shore up his marriage before, just so she doesn't run back to Cruz.
I think he feels he at the very least needs to consummate it.
Yes, I think so. Mrs. Cordell tells Brick that there's no information available about who was on staff the day he was born. He calls his mother, and she surprisingly remembers the name of the doctor. It was Dr. McCrae. Amy says, oh, Joe used to deliver newspapers to a Dr. McCrae just a couple of blocks from here. They look up the phone number, and as Brick is dialing, Amy says, of course, he died this summer. But next thing we know, Mrs. McCrae has showed up at their door, and she pulls the folder out of her bag. She has brought Dr. McCrae's notes on Brick Wallace's birth. And the most noteworthy thing that Brick reads is attending nurse, Mrs. Matilda Cordell.
So she's being caught out in another lie, as far as Brick's concerned.
Brick wonders if there were ever any photos in these files, and Mrs. McRae is made to run home, but luckily it's only 2 blocks, and come back with a photo of Brick. And we only see it sort of through the back, so it kind of looks similar to the one that Minx had burned, but not clear actually. she says there was a photographer that the hospital used to pay to come and take photos of newborns. So that seems to be Brick's next line of attack, is to try and track down that photographer. Or his widow. Oh yes, he died this summer. Gina encounters Mason and Janice coming home, and tells Janice that Mason took her son away and caused his father's stroke, and had an affair with her. And Janice says, with you? Poor Mason. So all this stuff that Gina's hoping will make Janice run the other way is actually doesn't seem to faze Janice at all.
It's kind of interesting in a way because the last time we saw Janice and Mason together, she was very offended that he would question her going into acting, and that was a huge thing between them. Whereas these revelations, as you say, they don't really faze her at all, and it's really interesting, just the difference in her reaction to this and the acting thing, which she seems to be more sensitive about. But also the differences in her reaction and, say, Mary's reaction, which would have been, I think, much more, which we did see was much more appalled than hers is.
Gina warns Janice, if you love something, don't tell Mason what it is, because he'll try and take it from you. And then she says, as they leave, she says, I hope you live the rest of your miserable life alone. I hope you die that way. Mason pops by Sally's apartment later with high hopes. Janice asks him to spend the night on the couch. So he's resigned to that, but, I think he's thinking he could maybe, make things happen anyway, as long as he's invited to stay over.
So is Dylan no longer staying there? Because she doesn't seem to be expecting him at all. No,
we see her before Mason shows up. She's actually already in bed, and she's in the master bed in the one other room, in that one room, almost 1.5 room apartment. So, I don't know where Dylan is presumably sleeping nowadays. Carolers come by, and Janice is all very excited by that, but Mason wants to pour eggnog on them. So Janice calls him a Scrooge, and he says the only thing Scrooge got wrong was not telling the ghosts to buzz off.
And this sets us up very nicely for the next stage of our Mason story.
He still tries to get her into bed, but she says, not tonight. Implication being that she's she's more than happy to sleep with him, but just not today. He says, humbug. Eden encounters Gina, leaving with 2 suitcases. I guess it's too much to hope that you're moving out, says Eden. Gina says, you and your shifty new husband can be king and queen of the castle. And then Gina says to Kirk, I guess you can be lady of the house now.
I like how Eden actually offers to carry Gina's bags if it'll actually get rid of her. Which, of course, is a throwback to Gina asking her to carry up her bags when she comes home from France.
And yet another reference to Kirk being basically Mrs. Eden Capwell.
Yeah, and a glorified sort of secretary.
Yes, and she says, this secretary you married is too blind or too stupid to see what kind of a tramp you are. She does have I did cut this quite down, but Gina just has a long diatribe about, how, Eden's had a string of lovers and other, threatening people with swords and all of Eden's transgressions, only, 99% of them, which were her fault, though. The sword wielding was actually Gina's fault.
Yes, that's right. I caught that, too. I thought that was very nervy of Gina.
Cruz arrives and says, you're not leaving town, are you? There's an investigation going on. She says, you don't need me, do you? And he says, I guess not. She goes, well, I'm moving to Los Angeles. I've taken an apartment there. I hope you all have a very Merry Christmas. In hell! So she's managed to get out of the house, phase 1, but she still needs Brandon. So she heads for Santana's apartment. Rings the bell. It's after 10, Rosa says, when she tries to get Brandon to come to the car and help me unload packages, which is her excuse for being there. Rosa says, I'll help you. She goes, no, I just want to say goodnight to him. So anyway, Rosa does not let Gina in. So Gina fumes in the car and says, well, you can't stay awake forever. And eventually Santana comes home and Rosa leaves. And Gina comes up with another scheme to get inside. She knocks on the door and tells Santana, oh, yeah, I was just at the Campwell house, and Eden and Kirk are getting an annulment, and Cruz and Eden are back together. And meanwhile, Santana's trying to make some tea, and she's really quite flustered by all this, and Gina ends up in the house as a result. And while Santana's back is turned, Gina smashes her over the head with some glass object that she's picked up and knocks her unconscious. Drags her into the corner so Brandon doesn't see her when she goes to wake him up and says, oh, guess what? Santana said you can spend Christmas with me. Let's go! So he's in his PJs and she drags him out.
To Gina's credit, she does actually phone for an ambulance for Santana before she leaves.
Yeah, I think she checks her pulse or whatever, and she realizes she's hit her maybe a bit harder than she'd thought because there's smashed glass everywhere.
Which ironically makes Gina more useful to Santana than Cruz this episode.
Well, when Santana awakens, the first thing she does is try to call Cruz. I don't know where she calls him at because Cruz is actually on the phone at the Capwell house. And thanks Kirk for letting him use the phone. And Kirk, I think rightly says, you're just trying to stall because you're waiting for Eden to come back. But Kirk tries to get rid of him before Eden comes down. And during their conversation, Cruz says, you've done some good things for Eden. And Kirk says, a compliment from you is no compliment at all. And Cruz says, we both want the same thing. And Kirk says, Eden? After Cruz finally leaves, Kirk asks Eden what she and Cruz were talking about at the Orient Express after he left. So once again, he's trying to find out exactly how, close their conversation was. And Eden says, my father. Kirk says to her, you know what, I'm gonna find out who really pulled the plug on Cece. And then we hear a voiceover in his head, which is the same line from before. I will tell you, but not just yet. The role of Channing Capwell Jr. is now being played by Jarston Witness. Channing is back as a ghost. The ghost of Channing Jr. visits Mason in his dream as he sleeps on Sally's wicker couch. And this very much reminded me of Dark Shadows when Jeremiah Collins came back as a zombie, because it clearly wasn't the same actor who'd played Jeremiah Collins. It was just another guy in bandages. And the way they have Channing here, he's wearing white, his face is white, they've got a super bright white light on him. He's just a white glow, and maybe the VHS to digital conversion that we're watching doesn't help. But if it were the same actor playing Channing as originally played him, there's no way you could tell just from the face. Voice-wise, I don't know. I'm not familiar enough with the voice, but I just don't think it was him. He's not... the person who played Channing in this episode is not credited anywhere, which makes me wonder if it is Jarston Witness. Mason, in his dream, is wearing a red cap because he's now been teleported into the role of Scrooge in his own dream. And the ghost of Channing says he's come back from hell to warn Mason. He's carrying around these heavy chains because of the bad deeds he did while he was alive, and Mason's future has the same thing in store for him. Tomorrow is December 24th, the holiest night of the year, and you will be visited by 3 more ghosts. 3 more spirits. Now, I remembered Mason having a Scrooge thing at Christmas, but I didn't know it was going to be this Christmas. So. And I don't remember who will be playing the other 3 spirits. Whether Mason goes back in time to some reenactment of younger things. I suspect we'll see maybe a young Mason and a young Channing and a young young Cece. Cece's in a coma, and they have no one currently cast as Cece. So maybe Sophia. Maybe it'll be a Sophia and young Mason and young Channing scene or something. I don't know. I don't remember it, but I'm excited about it. So, and it's good that it's going to be tomorrow because that means Mason can wake up and actually move to his real bed at the Capitol House to have the rest of his dream. It'll probably be actually better because they're usually organized those bedrooms in such a way that someone can come in, stand in the doorway, and talk to the person in the bed. So that's probably better for ghosts to be backlit through a doorway. So what do you think? Are you excited about the Mason Scrooge thing, or?
I guess I'm actually more excited about seeing how Brick's storyline.
Mm-hmm. This is quite exciting too, and it seems to be
Yeah.
going along at breakneck speed. So yeah, these are the two things that we'll be seeing. I wonder if we'll be seeing Channing again. Haven't looked ahead at IMDb or anything to see what is coming up this week, but I know Brick's story comes to a head on New Year's Eve, so I know that much. But it looks like he's got a lot of people to visit still before maybe he puts it all together. So that is it for Monday, December 23rd. And this is the first of many wacky Christmas adventures for Mason.
I wonder if they'll do It's a Wonderful Life at some point.
I don't remember. I just know that it somehow becomes a Christmas tradition that Mason gets plopped into a traditional Christmas setting. So I think they may well do that. Was
it Dallas that famously did
I think the finale of Dallas was It's a Wonderful Life. Yeah. So, which is basically a rip-off of A Christmas Carol, isn't it?
Not exactly.
It's quite similar. It's quite similar. We'll be back after we watch episode 358. Merry Christmas!
Bye-bye.
I hope you rise up out of this bed and make everybody miserable like you used to. Now you and your shifty new husband can be king and queen of the hill. Well, I guess you can be lady of the house now. Be sure to tell the servants not to make too much noise while they dust. Not while Eden's working.
Look, if you're going, then just shut up and go while you still can.
And you, this secretary you married. Well, you're either too blind or too stupid to see what a little tramp your bride was before she said I do. But I guess it doesn't make any difference. Not as long as you get to be almost a Capwin. So how's married life treating you, Kirk? I've seen the separate beds. From what I hear, Eden's quite a toss in the hay, but I guess you haven't had a chance to find out for yourself yet. I hope you all have a very Merry Christmas in hell.
Look, I think you're making a big mistake.
You always think I'm making a mistake, no matter what I do.
That's not true. But I'm generally right anyway.
Welcome back.
Hello.
We finished episode 358 of Santa Barbara, which originally aired Tuesday, December 24th, 1985. We didn't talk about the Nancy Grand chat that we had over the weekend with a group of people from the Santa Barbara Facebook group. So that was a lot of fun. We talked to Nancy Grand for over 2 hours, and we all got to say hi to her and ask her questions. And she told us tales that we'd heard maybe the other half of while we were on the cruise. Can't reveal anything that was said. A lot of secrets were revealed. And we're back. All right. On the show, Lionel brings an armload of gifts for Brandon. But Cruz and Santana are on their way out the door because Gina has been spotted in San Diego, or her car has. Sophia arrives, and Lionel has to break it to her that Brandon has been taken by Gina. He says he's happy that she can spend Christmas with her family. And he has a flashback to a Christmas with Augusta. Now, either this was from last year, or it was a newly shot memory of Christmas. Last year they were in prison, or he was in prison, or they all had dinner in prison. So I think this flashback might have been like shot as a
I think so too.
Earlier times flashback.
Yeah.
He phones Frank Armstead. Nice to see Frank again. Janice wakes up to find Mason wrapping Christmas gifts. He tells her the idea came to him in a dream. And we're thinking, oh, he's had a Scrooge-like conversion due to his Christmas Carol-like dream. But no, he is wrapping bad gifts for everyone. He says, yes, we have Noel, which I'm assuming is a twist on yes, we have no bananas. And he is wrapping coal for Eden. Mace for Ted, in case someone tries to accuse him of rape unjustly again. For Brer Kirk, a guide to divorce. For wicked stepmother Sophia, a travel alarm. And Janice says, why are you so mean? You're worse than Scrooge. And Mason says, I'm better. I won't be doing any last-minute repenting on Christmas morning. I'm really ashamed of you, says Janice.
Well, we'll have to see.
Humbug, says Mason once again. Eden tells Kirk that she's been trying very hard to remember if she pulled the plug on Cece. Now, Kirk goes to the attic to type another note, and I heard you say, oh, he's typing another note for Gina. But we almost immediately found out that is not true. The note says, I saw you do it, instructions to follow, and he wraps it in a gift box, and it says on it, for Eden. And then I remembered something from all those years ago.
So I mean, obviously, if Eden really feels she did it, that always gives Kirk more leverage. I was also wondering if he was trying to drive her a little bit around the bend as well, because it's very, you know, considering the mixture of drugs and alcohol did make Eden quite erratic and paranoid, feeling like someone watched her and was anonymously sending these notes would really contribute to that too as well.
Well, we'll see how far he takes this. We haven't seen Eden open the box yet. Mason introduces Janice to the family, and he makes a point of recalling how Channing always received a lot of presents. A group of carolers arrives, and Mary is among them. And Mason's kind of forced to stick around at the front door because Sophia opens it up and hangs out outside to listen. Mary ends up asking Mason, unexpectedly, if he would play Santa tomorrow at the clinic. I think it was at the clinic. Don't know if I necessarily would have thought to ask Mason to do that, but he declines. So Ted steps up and says, I'll play Santa for you tomorrow. A maid arrives with Eden's mystery gift, and they note that it is that the note on top is typed, so they can't tell who it's from, and it gets put under the tree. Ted reads from A Christmas Carol, and Sophia says that Cece always loved Christmas, but Ted says that the last few years all they got was checks. Mason returns with Janice, and Mason is drunk. I seem to be listing slightly to port, or from port. Janice sends Mason off to bed. Now, Janice's stalker is watching them through the Capwell window and ends up following her home.
Now, Janice does actually stay for dinner, and it does
that's
seem
right.
that the Capwells do rather like her.
Yeah,
So.
Masons get sent off to bed, but Sophia invites her to stay and
Yeah.
have dinner. Later, when Janice is at home, though, we see that the stalker is there, and Janice forgets to lock the door to Sally's apartment at first, and cranks the music really loud, so we see the gloved hand actually turning her doorknob. But then we see inside she comes and locks the door, so it seems like she's safe for that night. Eden opens a gift from Kirk, and it's another expensive necklace, and Eden has given Kirk an underwater watch.
And it doesn't seem like Eden's actually that excited about Kirk's massively expensive necklace. And just from what little we see of it, it looks like it's a pretty big, heavy, over-the-top kind of necklace. And I'm not sure we've ever seen, I mean, it is the 80s, obviously, but I don't think we've ever really seen Eden dress up in quite that ostentatious a style. So It seems to be more to impress than necessarily something with Eden's personality or whatever in mind.
And he literally just gave her a necklace a couple of days ago. The underwater watch is interesting because we know Eden likes to dive, so has some meaning, I guess, if she wants them to have something they can do together. Although they're both so busy with work, who knows when they ever will get time for that. And she allows him a brief kiss.
Yeah, but it's very chaste.
It is very quick. Cruz and Santana are watching Gina's car in a parking lot in San Diego, and they mention they're about a mile from the airport. The call comes in on the radio saying that Gina has rented a car a block away from where they found her car. So Santana and Cruz go to the car rental agency, and the lady there says that Gina wanted maps of San Diego and Tijuana. Cruz and Santana search some of the nearby hotels and then end up deciding to call it a night and check into a hotel. But first Santana wants to stop off at a church where they light a candle and say some prayers. So we might be seeing a Cruz and Santana in a hotel scene. Might be one of those, oh, there's only one room left things that has happened to Dylan and Kelly and Rick and Amy. I don't know. Some other people have had a last room at the end. Oh, Ted and Lakin.
Yeah, and, seeing them together in the church and on this long road trip, obviously there is a connection there. It is different than the one Cruz has with Eden, but there is definitely a connection.
Julia and Warren invite Augusta to come with them to Lake Tahoe, where they are planning to have Christmas with Lakin. Augusta says that she can't go, so they leave without her. Frank Armstead shows up with an armload of gifts, and he says, you're supposed to open them in the right order. So already Augusta's a little suspicious, but she opens them, and it turns out they are the same 5 gifts that Lionel originally gave her for their first 5 Christmases. So she gets more and more weepy as she opens the gifts. And Frank was like, oh, these were supposed to make you happy. And, she knows Lionel obviously put him up to that, but she's not too upset by it because I guess she is feeling lonely.
Yeah.
Julia and Warren return with a surprise. It's Lakin!
Looking very blonde.
She's got her hair could... just when you thought her hair couldn't get any more 80s. So unfortunately we have a very bad copy of this episode, so we can really get a good clear view of Lakin's new hair and makeup, but she definitely seems to have zhuzhed things up a little more than usual. They have Christmas dinner in Augusta's hotel room, and Warren says grace, but then there's a knock on the door, and it's Lionel. They assume he had been spending Christmas with Minx, but Minx is in Palm Springs. So I don't know if she's alone or with her bridge group or has a date. Maybe she took Mrs. Cordell there to try to bribe her for all the work she's done. So, of course, the kids want Lionel to have Christmas dinner with them, and Augusta begrudgingly agrees. We'll have to say grace again. And Warren says maybe this time Dad can do it. And Lionel actually says quite a long grace, portion of which is clearly directed at Augusta and their future together. So Augusta somewhat rolls her eyes a bit at that. Midnight at the Capwell house, and Mason is visited by the first ghost of the evening, and playing the ghost of Christmas past is Ted Capwell.
Doing double duty this episode. As Ted and a ghost.
And the ghost. He takes Mason back to when they were children. And we see Sophia dressed to look young again, like she has been a few times in the past, when her affair with Lionel, for example, she has been done in flashbacks. And we have a young Mason, Channing, Eden, and Kelly. We wonder if any of those kids are anyone famous, because they don't get a credit in the credits. Will we ever know who those people were?
Well, we can tell you one thing. Mason has not grown out of Leonardo DiCaprio yet.
No, it is still someone else playing Mason. Ted is in a bassinet, says Ghost of Christmas Past Ted. Although he says, that's me in the bassinet, so he knows he's Ted. Cece? We had been wondering how we were going to see Cece if they did a Christmas Past. He's behind a newspaper the whole time. So we thought they don't need to cast Cece. But Mason says he got his first three-piece suit that Christmas while Channing got a horse. He tells Ted, I hated that suit and I wanted Channing's horse. Then Cece gets up and he's in riding gear, but his head is above the screen, so we do not see Cece's face. But then, to my surprise, he actually speaks to Channing. He says, oh, we'll go riding later. So it wasn't Charles Bateman, but the guy who did the voice sounded a little bit like Charles Bateman. So that was interesting. Mm-hmm. And once again, we don't find out from the credits who played Cece in this scene. So was it Jarston Witness? Was it someone else? Were they purposely doing a Charles Bateman impression? We may never know. Sophia returns with a batch of cookies, and they all grab a bunch, and it looks like Eden grabs one of Channing's cookies, and he chases her behind the tree, and they knock the tree over, Eden and Channing. Mm-hmm. And Sophia says, who did that? And all three, Kelly, Eden, and Channing, point at Mason. Mm-hmm. And he takes the blame for knocking over the family Christmas tree. And Sophia actually sends him to his room. So he has reason to hate all four of those people, and rightly so. They're terrible people. We wouldn't blame him for hating them for the rest of his life.
But, of course, we also saw him being a bit of a brat in this by taking all the cookies.
He did try to take quite a few cookies when they first came.
Yeah.
I think Channing was a brat as well, and so was Eden.
But it's kind of funny because, certainly if you've ever read the book Christmas Carol or seen any of the movie versions, the Ghost of Christmas Past takes Scrooge on quite a few journeys through his childhood, but Mason's journey is short.
Mm-hmm. Ted says, time to go back. I've seen what I wanted you to see. So, it seems like Mason's got a right to be to be nasty to his family from what Ted showed him. Mm-hmm. So, I don't know if that's really what he was supposed to get out of that.
Yeah.
They teleport back to Mason's room, and it's now 1 a.m. And presumably, the next episode will start with Mason being visited by the ghost of Christmas Present. Now, where do you think? You think we'll see Mary and Mark working at the clinic or something like that?
Could be. It depends on who is in the cast that day, I would say. But that would be a good one. Or the family wrapping presents and talking about Mason or something like that. That's a possibility.
And that is the end of the episode, and that is the last time we will ever see Julie Ronnie as Lakin Lockridge. Much to my disappointment as a child, although I wouldn't have known it at the time.
It's interesting they brought her back just for that one scene, basically.
So I don't know if we'll even see the Lockridges tomorrow. Mm-hmm. It'll be an all Capwell, or maybe an all Dream episode. Maybe it'll be an all Mason and Ghosts episode. And tomorrow will be the very last time we see another Santa Barbara character and actor. Any guesses?
Oh, my goodness. I can't think offhand who it might be. Maybe I'll just take a shot and say this. No, actually, that won't work. You're going to have to edit this.
I will stick that back in a little bit earlier. Yeah, it's probably going to be a scene similar to the Lockridge Christmas scene, if I had to guess. Does that help you?
No.
All right, I will obviously tell you at the end who it is. And this recording is so bad because it was obviously a VHS or maybe even a beta recording off of NBC, because we hear the announcer talk about Mr. T goes home to visit his mother, and Riptide and Remington Steele. Will Remington Steele fall for a marked woman? So the original NBC Santa Barbara airing. And as I said, we did have credits in this episode, but none of the extra people actually got a credit. It was just the main cast. And the piano furnished by Schaefer & Sons was more important than telling us who played Cece, young Mason, young Channing, young Kelly, and young Eden.
Now, do we absolutely know that these credits went with this episode?
I think so, because, if I made a note here, theme over Mason's clock. So the theme played over a shot of Mason's clock reading 1 o'clock. So that must have been this episode. And that is it for episode 358, I think it was. Let me just double check before I say the wrong number again. 358. So we'll be back after the Christmas Day episode. Episode 359, which we're about to watch now. We'll see you then.
Bye-bye.
I have a lot of widows and orphans to foreclose on. Yes, we have Noel. First off, for Eden, a box of coal. Because she so royally botched the family oil business, she doesn't deserve anything more.
Oh, Mason.
And for Ted, it's wrapped already. It's a can of mace in case he's attacked by any more lovesick teenagers. And for Brer Kirk, we have a how-to book on divorce, getting a quick and easy one. For my wicked stepmother, Sophia, I have a travel alarm, because traveling's what she's going to be doing a lot of once she's kicked out of the house. And now we have my little brother, Ted. My half-brother, actually. We never decided what the other half was, did we, Ted?
Yeah. I mean, he thinks he's really witty.
All of you, have yourselves a merry little Christmas Eve. Except for you, Sophia, and Eden.
Merry Christmas from Misha and Dianne watch Santa Barbara. Merry Christmas!
Merry Christmas.
It's December 25th, 1985, and we watched episode 359 of Santa Barbara. As you might remember, Mason Capwell was being visited by 3 ghosts. Last episode, he was visited by Ted, the ghost of Christmas past. Now he is visited by Sophia as the ghost of Christmas present. She shows him the Capwell living room again, where Kelly, Ted, Eden, and Kirk are having a great Christmas. Because they're happy that Mason isn't there. They say a lot of negative things about him, and then they teleport over to the clinic where Mary and Mark also are kissing and talking about how great it is that Mason's not here. The next ghost to visit Mason is Death. And he is the ghost of Christmas yet to come. And they teleport outside, it looks like Cece's window, and everyone is sad at the death. Then they see people in the Capwell living room talking about the person who's died, and they say that they were a miserable person, and the world's probably better off with them dead, and Mason starts to think maybe they're not talking about Cece. Mm-hmm. And the ghost teleports him to the graveyard, and when Mason rubs the snow off the headstone, it says Mason Capwell. And then he brushes the snow off the date, and he sees that it says 1986, which is just around the corner. Mason says, it can't happen that soon. So Mason wakes up from his dream, and it's 7 a.m., and he basically repeats all of the dialogue from Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. He says, it's not too late. And he runs outside. Downstairs, he gets all of the bad gifts from the under the tree and runs off. And he returns later with better gifts for everyone. He and ends up going upstairs to Cece and gives him a saddle and says, "This is for the Arabian that I bought outside." So he's had a Christmas conversion.
He also exchanged a surprisingly passionate kiss with Kelly along the way.
That's true, because after he wakes up, he runs out and says, "What day is it?" And Kelly takes the place of the random villager from the book. Says, "It's Christmas. You're the best sister a brother ever had."
I was sort of wondering where he was getting money for all this, because I thought Mason himself was broke, but maybe not.
Sophia said, "Oh, the stores are closed," and Mason indicates he bribed some people to get in. The gifts that he gives are not wrapped. He just sort of gives Ted like a coat, I think, or something like that. So that, or a floor mats for a car. So I think it was probably a coat. And then, I don't know, did you guess that this was going to happen? Mason takes the Santa costume from Ted and plays Santa himself at the clinic.
Yes, I did guess
I remembered as soon as Mason was asked yesterday by Mary, I remembered that Mason plays Santa. And it was a really fun scene. He had a really good costume as Santa. There were a bunch of kids there. And they were all excited, and he reads them the Christmas Carol, which Diane, you pointed out, is very long. So I don't know if there's a shortened version that's read to kids in clinics and hospitals and orphanages around the world. But we remember that just a couple of episodes ago, Ted was reading a Christmas Carol to the family.
Yeah.
You really only need to read that "God bless us everyone" part, don't you?
To get the idea, anyway.
So Mary's pretty impressed that he opted to play Santa and that it was so out of character. And then he donates $10,000 to the clinic. And in this episode, we had a special guest star. She's credited as Little Girl, but we actually know her name is Katie from the dialogue. It's the same as Brick's mother's name. Now, you didn't really recognize the person. So here's my hint. We watched her for 4 years making that face. You thought it might be Punky Brewster at one point, but that's not correct. Any guesses?
No.
That was, of course, Sherry Appleby, who we know better as Rachel Goldberg from Unreal. And, of course, she was in the original Roswell. And she's been directing some of the episodes of the Roswell revival and apparently made a surprise appearance in the season finale. So that was our first child star that became, a proper adult actor.
Wow.
Eden opens her mystery package. Kirk says, "Oh, looks like some kind of gift certificate or something." But of course, it's the blackmail letter that Kirk wrote her. Kirk runs up to the attic to type another letter and hides it in the newspaper. And when Ted brings that paper in, he gives the note to Eden. And it is a blackmail note requesting $10,000. I think he got the idea when Eden opened the first note and said, "Oh, they're probably going to want money." Oh, yeah, good idea.
So Eden's not having the best Christmas.
No, married to Kirk. At one point she calls Cruz about the blackmail note, but ends up calling back to cancel the call into Cruz. Cruz, of course, is out of town, so she hadn't immediately reached him when she called the station. Mary wants to bring Mark home to Ventura for Christmas and mentions that her mother, Theta, wouldn't actually be preparing a meal, that she's probably going to order Chinese food, so it's an extra person isn't going to throw off any plans.
She does mention that Christy will be there too, so Christy's still, part of the orbit of the show.
So we get mentions of Christy and Theta this episode. No mention of Jack.
No.
No mention of... We had a mention of Reuben a couple days ago, so the long gone people are still being kept alive.
Except for Jade, who we do not hear about this episode, although we do spend a little bit of time with the Perkins family. So We'll assume she's now, living abroad or something.
Did they mention her the other day?
Well, they had mentioned a few weeks after she left, they said, "Oh, isn't it a shame Jade couldn't be here?" I think that was around the time.
I thought there was something that mentioned a day or two ago.
Yeah, maybe I missed it. But so they have covered that she's gone. It's not like she suddenly disappeared from the show. They have offered a very slight explanation. So.
I mean, was she planning to go to school?
I don't know.
Nick, Dylan, and Sam drop off presents at the clinic and then show up at the Capwell mansion. Nick gives Kelly a set of paints, which she's very happy about. Kelly gives Nick a honeymoon trip to Hawaii.
Pretty nice.
That implies that they're going to be getting married in the near future, I would think. Of course, Dylan scowls in the background this whole time. And Nick also gives Kelly a puppy, which she names Briny.
Which everyone is, which he's sort of puzzled by. But.
A terrible name for anything. It's as bad as Dill's almost.
But the rest of the Capwell family is quite charmed by this.
Well, Ted loves the fact because they used to have a golden retriever named Briny who ran away. And this is a little golden retriever, I believe. So I don't know anything about dogs, but it looked golden retriever-y. Nick goes, "Hey, you and the dog have the same hair," to Kelly. The color, I think, not the length. Kelly gives Sam a tuxedo to wear while he's playing piano at the new casino. And she gives Dylan a pair of dice for luck.
And it occurred to me when she gave Sam the tuxedo, in a way it kind of reinforces the point Mason's been making all Christmas about how he got fobbed off with a suit while Channing got a horse. And here we have one of the more minor characters, certainly, in the Capwell orbit, who's getting given the same thing Mason got as the first son of CC all those years ago. I know we're past that, but...
Mason's probably not past. Marissa, Amy, Katie, Glenn, Brick, and Johnny open presents! The Wallaces give Brick a framed photo of himself as a newborn. And he spends quite some time looking at the photo while others are opening presents, and he eventually concludes that this baby is not the same as the one in the photo Mrs. McCrae had brought him the other day. So Amy and Brick visit Mrs. McCrae, so they built a whole set for the McCrae house. Quarter of a set. And she gives him a stack of other baby photos to look through, and he eventually finds a match. Now, this was a surprise to me that it's just a stack of photos, because presumably when she brought over the Brick photo, she had brought it from the file? No, I guess not.
She gave him a big stack originally.
She gave him the file. Oh, okay. So, presumably, he does find the baby that matches the one from from Katie and Glenn's gift. So, presumably, there'll be a name written on the back. Otherwise, how would she have originally found the first one?
Yeah, so I remember when he looked at the first stack, he was going through them and said, "Oh, here I am. Oh, no, that's not me." And then he found the one with his name on the back. I was a little surprised that he didn't, when he had the one that was identified as his, that he realized was not a match. I was a little surprised he didn't go back through that pile to see if there was one that was a match and what name was on the back of that.
I thought that's what he did. I thought he went through the photos looking at the pictures to find the one that matched the framed photo.
Maybe.
Because he doesn't know the name, right?
Yeah.
So he needs to find the name now that he's found the photo.
Yeah, you're right. That makes more sense now that we're talking it through. Yeah. I didn't get that. I was trying to figure out exactly what it just wasn't quite what I had expected, but now that you're saying
I was expecting her to bring out three more folders from that day and have him look at the other three. I didn't realize it'd be a huge stack of photos.
Yeah.
And they invite Mrs. McCrae to join them for Christmas dinner. Now, I asked you last time, who do you think we've seen for the last time? Any ideas?
Mrs. McRae?
Well, I'm not sure about that, but that's the last time we'll see Valerie Armstrong, who plays Marissa Perkins. So we've lost another member of the Perkins family today. We're down to just Amy.
Yeah.
Wow. For one of the core families of the show, that is a big surprise. And somewhat of a disappointment, because I think a lot of people like the fact that there were 4 families in the show with different levels of class, I guess, in the city. So, we haven't seen her for a while, but Brooke and Amy have happily had lots of scenes in the Perkins living room, so I guess that doesn't necessarily mean we've seen the last of the Perkins house. But we'll see how many more times Amy and Brooke mention either Jade or Marissa in the future.
Yeah.
Definitely note it.
Yeah.
And the show ends with Mason leaving the clinic and winking at the camera. And the theme is, it's not the normal theme song, it's a vocal Christmas song that I don't know, or I assume it was a Christmas song. It wasn't familiar to me at all. And a lot of the scenes of the cast enjoying Christmas from today and yesterday's episode, but also some additionally shot scenes that we didn't see. Specifically, I remember Rosa coming and putting a poinsettia down. I don't think that was from this episode, unless it happened a couple days ago. And then definitely the one of Minx is brand new, because she's dressed for Christmas, and she comes to a table and just looks sort of in the general neighborhood of the camera and has a nice shot. And I think that's the final shot we see, I think.
And she seems to be in the Lockridge house, but we could imagine her getting on a plane to Palm Springs soon after that, I guess.
Yeah. So, and there may have been 1 or 2 other minor ones that were shot for this. Cruz and Santana, they went with a flashback of them decorating the tree, so I don't think that one had any new stuff. So that was nice that they were able to get the characters who aren't in the episode into the closing credits for Christmas.
It was nice. And the thing with Mason at the end giving that wink at the camera, it actually reminded me a little bit of a comment that was made when we were on the cruise. And it was just part of a panel discussion that the guests were having about kind of goofs behind the scenes and, when did people crack lines and that kind of thing. And I think Judith McConnell had made a point that, you really had to keep to a tight schedule and everyone was always expected to be prepared and professional and everything. But then she did make a comment that, the only one who was really given leeway was Lane Davies. And she said, but of course, he was the star of the show. It was his show. And them giving him that little Scrooge storyline and this sort of marquee spot at the end, I think, really emphasizes that point at this point in the show.
So Ted had an interesting comment, of course, when Mason was giving everyone gifts. He said, "This isn't going to last." So what do you think? Is it going to last?
I think it will last for a little while, but I think it'll be really interesting when Cece wakes up to see if it will last past that. We know we're getting a new Cece. One of the comments made on the cruise was all the actors really loved working with the new Cece, Jed Allen, and that he was a very, very sort of competitive actor who would really push the other actors as scene partners. So it'll be really interesting to see that energy that he will bring to that character and how that affects the storylines with Mason. Also, it'll be interesting to see what Kirk has up his sleeve to presumably get Mason pushed out of the house. So between Kirk and Gina, I think there might be a little bit of headwinds for Mason going into the next year.
Maybe with Gina being a full-blown bad guy now, and Kirk veering that way as well. Maybe they will let Mason have a new attitude in the coming year. We had credits in this episode, and it was all the usual main cast. And then the additional people were, they had Janice Harrison as Kathy Shower, Marissa Perkins as played by Valerie Armstrong, Katie Wallace, Glenn Wallace, Little Girl Sherry Appleby, and Mrs. McCrae, Frances Bay. And Cerebral Tracer and Piano furnished by Schaefer & Sons also got a credit. So it's interesting, there's a Christmas episode. Sometimes soaps don't do a Christmas episode. And they will definitely be skipping next Wednesday. For New Year's Day, there won't be an episode of Santa Barbara. So we'll have another 4-day week, and we'll have a nice cliffhanger with Rick's discoveries, I think. So we'll be back wearing our Santa hats when we watch episode 360, the Boxing Day episode of 1985. We will see you then.
Bye-bye.
Happy Boxing Day!
Hello.
Cece's out raking leaves and Ruben's relaxing in Cece's bed. It's Boxing Day. Look it up. December 26th, 1985, episode 360. And one thing I had written down but forgotten to mention when we were talking about the closing credits yesterday, in addition to Minx getting a specially shot scene, there was a scene for Pearl and Janice. Mm-hmm. And it was them dancing. So they actually, I guess, decided. We've got 2 extra characters we want to feature in the Christmas thing, and we don't have Christmassy scenes with any of them. So they were dancing in buzzes, which I don't know if it was decorated for Christmas or a couple of things were hung up in the background, because I don't think we've seen buzzes this week. So it's probably not been decorated. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that was fun to see Pearl and Janice dancing, and that's only the second scene they've had together, and it's not even real. Mm-hmm. Unless, maybe Janice was bored Christmas Eve, and swung by buzzes, and there's a whole area of fan fiction that can be written about Buzz and Pearl. Buzz and Pearl. No, not Buzz and Pearl. Pearl and Janice. Santana and Cruz are in a giant Mexican hotel room. Really, it was weird. It was like super big, and it had a fireplace, and one of them was sleeping on the floor. I don't know. Anyway, they get word that a car matching the description of Gina's rental car was found crashed and burning on the side of the road, and that a boy was taken to the hospital. So they spend much of the episode in the hospital trying to get in to see the boy, to see whether it's Brandon. A completely fluent English-speaking police officer arrives. So I don't know if he was supposed to be a Mexican police officer, but clearly he wasn't.
But it is clearly supposed to take place in Mexico because we saw Spanish signs.
All the signs are in Spanish, and one of the nurses spoke fluently in Spanish with Santana. The doctor kind of looks like he could be Spanish, but he was speaking English with Santana and Cruz, and I don't think he necessarily had an accent, I don't recall. But the police officer lets them look through the bag of personal belongings that they managed to get from the burning car, and Brandon's things are in there. So they think it's Brandon, but the doctor takes a long time to clear them to go in to see the boy, and it turns out it's not Brandon after all that. It's a young boy who stole the car, which had not been populated when he found it. Cruz asked if he saw a woman and a boy, but he said no, it was just abandoned.
And Cruz cottons on to this actually really quickly, what the actual scenario is, which I was grateful for because I was quite confused. So it was kind of nice that he put it all together really quickly. Mm-hmm.
I commented out with the blurry VHS copy of the NBC airing that we saw when we first see Santana. Just for a second, she looked a lot like Ava Lazar. So I thought that was kind of interesting. So Cruz and Santana kind of have a bit of a moment at the end of the episode, and at one point they go in for a hug, and I thought they were going to kiss actually, and it turned into a hug. Mason dreams of Mary, and finds out that she didn't sleep at the Capwell house last night. He knows right where to go, and Mary's car is parked outside of Mark's place. But first, Mason tells Cece about his dream, his Christmas Carol dream, and his decision to change his ways. And as Mason leaves, Cece's hand reaches across his chest toward Mason. So maybe comatose Cece is willing to accept that Mason has changed. At Mark's apartment, Mason once again finds Mary wearing Mark's robe after having had a shower, and once again jumps to the wrong conclusion and storms out.
Now, interestingly enough, considering the antipathy between Mark and Mason, Mark actually kind of takes Mason's, not side exactly, but he actually argues for Mason's perspective in this. Because Mary's, of course, very affronted at Mason, making these assumptions and that. And Mark sort of says, well, if it was me and I walked in on this, I would probably think the same thing.
We find out that Mary had actually planned to stay at the Capwell house, but when she got to the front door, she was about to put the key in and decided she didn't want to be in the same house, so she asked Mark if she could stay on his couch. Mark does say to Mary that he didn't really buy Mason's act yesterday at the clinic, so Mark thinks that was all a put on. And then Mark tells Mary he's been in love with her since high school, and Mary decides that yes, let's go beyond this two musketeer relationship that we have and see what can develop. And they kiss.
Yeah.
So looks like Mason may have to find someone else. But that might happen very soon. Janice is jazzercising. Do people still jazzercise? Maybe all the modern day viewers who are watching our podcast.
I'm sure there's probably lots of jazzercise videos on YouTube that people use to exercise at home still.
It's probably not called jazzercising
They probably
anymore.
Don't wear 80s
and they're probably
workout
not
clothes
wearing
for
that
it.
leotard and leggings combo. So Dylan is on the phone with Nick in the background, talking about the fact that he's got some designers coming in, or architects coming in later, to look at the designs Kelly made. And after he gets off the phone and Janice turns down the music, he tells her that he's throwing a surprise engagement party for Dylan and Kelly. Well, maybe it's not a surprise.
For Nick and Kelly.
Sorry, for Nick and Kelly. Freudian slip. And he says, I'm going to get some flowers. And Janice goes, yeah, Kelly will love that. So Janice is really just, seeing this is just another reason to be in the same room with Kelly, basically. So, hey, Pearl is planning a clam bake for the big do because the party is at Buzz's. And Janice is going to get some fake pearls and hide them in all the shells. I guess that was a thing, because she seemed to think that was something that a lot of people did and they'd be easy to find.
I actually really liked Janice's remark to Dylan that she knows the way he works, that he'll plan this big elaborate thing and then find a way for everyone else to do the work on it, which I thought was pretty accurate.
He's talking about some fish house punch he wants to make, which sounds terrible. Pearl shows up and shows Dylan the captain's hat he's purchased for when he ferries passengers out to the casino. He also mentions needing a bonus to buy a new boat because obviously he doesn't want to ferry people in his old fish boat. But Dylan declines to buy him a new boat. And then Pearl says, well, just wait and see what I charge you for the clams. Mason arrives, and instead of joining Dylan to look for his punch ingredients, she kicks him out and decides she'd rather hang out with Mason. Next thing you know, Janice and Mason are in bed together.
And Mason actually presents Janice with a very nice Christmas gift, which I'm assuming was originally intended for Mary.
It's a diamond and gold ring, so I expect it was for Mary. So, interesting that of all the intuition Janice has about both Dylan and Mason's many intentions, she doesn't comment, oh, I bet this was for Mary. Maybe she thought it, but she definitely didn't say it.
Well, why turn down a nice gift if someone gives it to you with no strings attached?
So that was actually a very minimalist episode. There weren't actually that many characters in it. Didn't really realize till I was deconstructing it that it was just a few little things with Mason sort of joining a couple of the storylines together.
And really, I think the theme of this episode is, we have Cruz and Santana, and Cruz and Santana have a very nice friendship, but Cruz would probably rather be with Eden. And we have Mason, who would rather be with Mary, and Mary would rather be with Mason, and Mark, who would probably rather be with his wife, but he's with Mary, and Janice, who'd rather be with Dylan, but she's with Mason. So we've got this.
And Janice, who might be Mark's wife. We still don't know for sure.
We still don't know
what his whole wife's backstory is.
Yeah. So we've got had a lot of characters this episode who were hooking up, but or making connections, but would probably rather be with someone else.
That's it for episode 361. Tomorrow will be the last week of Christmas week, Friday, December 27th, 1985, and be episode 361. Oh, we didn't talk about what Christmas gifts we got in 1985. I did not get a VCR. It hadn't even occurred to me to ask for one, and I didn't even know how much they were. So, another year of audio recordings, Santa Barbara. Although, I'll be off to Vancouver in a week, and there'll be no one there to make me go to school. So I think I'll see about 4 months worth of Santa Barbara. And not enough inside of a classroom. All right, we'll see you in a few minutes after we watch the Friday episode. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Kirk's up early, you sleep late. What do you two do? Take shifts in the bedroom?
I'm dreaming of a white balanced Christmas. Welcome back.
Hello.
We have finished episode 361, December 27th, 1985. Friday, the last day of the week, last day of Christmas week. But I'm sure we'll still be festive until the end of next week. Kirk's up early, you stay up late. What do? Take shifts in the bedroom? Mason asks Eden. Then Mason spots Kirk coming down from the attic. Kirk, of course, has been typing away at another letter for Eden. Kirk tells Mason that he was up there doing some research on the Capwell Company and that some of his grandfather's papers are up there. So that's interesting. Bit of canon to learn.
Yeah, I also wonder if he's been going through those papers to see if there's any little loopholes or any little bits of knowledge he can get that will advantage him at some point.
Maybe that's how he stumbled upon that typewriter up there in the first place. The new note asks for $10,000 in unmarked bills to be delivered to the cemetery tonight at 6. And Kirk hires someone to deliver it to draw suspicion away. Eden concludes that the notes must be coming from someone they know. I don't know why they don't discuss the possibility of a neighbor with binoculars. Although I guess technically she would know them too.
Well, we don't really know what the layout is of the, whole yard and everything. I mean, it may very well be that they just don't have any neighbors on that side.
Well, but the first night they said, maybe someone saw me through the window.
Oh, okay.
But I don't know if it might be the Lockridges. Kelly asks Sophia if she had to do it over again, would she tell Cece about Channing? And Sophia says she doesn't think Cece would have married her if he'd known. But then Sophia kind of thinks that maybe something else is up with Kelly. Something to do with her relationship with Nick. Pearl takes Kelly out to the rig to keep her busy until the 6 p.m. surprise party. But his boat has some issues. He doesn't actually get back to Buzz's until 5:45. So Dylan says he'll take the boat out and go get Kelly. And surprise, the boat breaks down when he gets to the oil rig, and he and Kelly end up stranded there. Think they'll have another unexpected encounter, or will it be too cold out on that rig in December?
Oh, I'm sure the cold will just enhance their desire for each other.
The smell of oil. Janice shows Dylan the ring Mason gave her. Mason and Janice talk, and play Go Fish. Mason wants to fool around on the wicker couch, but Janice says, oh no, Dylan sleeps there. Mason says, the world is fraught with used furniture.
I actually, I'm not the biggest fan of Dylan, but I actually did really like his little scene with Janice in this, because he, of course, hones in on her little gold ring right away. Says, oh, that's a big rock. Where did you get that? And she tells him that Mason gave it to her, and it's a really nice moment, actually. He says, oh, I'm really glad someone gave you something so nice. I liked that.
Mason figures out that Dylan is interested in Kelly. Later at the party, Mason seems a bit jealous over how chummy Pearl and Janice are. Maybe when Pearl and Janice were dancing in that deleted scene, they got close. We see Pearl then hitting on some other party goer. Pearl and Amy are, of course, the ones who decorate Buzz's place. And Kirk and Eden arrive at the party a little bit early, so Eden plans to sneak out and go to the cemetery at 6 p.m. And Kirk says that he'll stay at the party and see which of the people they know leaves, based on Eden's suspicion it's someone they know. Kirk, of course, sneaks out himself so that he could retrieve the money after Eden puts it in the urn. But before Kirk can get it, an amorous couple shows up at the cemetery. They're purportedly teens, because the guy mentions that her parents were home, but they didn't look that teen from the casting standpoint.
I think they were hoping this sort of dim-lit set would make them appear a bit younger than they probably actually are.
So he's forced to return to the party empty-handed, and he tells Eden, no one left the party while you were gone. Later, he finds a way to ditch Eden and goes back to the cemetery to retrieve the $10,000. Now, it's worth noting that Kirk actually got the $10,000 from his own account, maybe partly to make Eden feel like he's contributing, but maybe also partly so that if his scheme is ever found out, he can't actually be arrested for stealing any Capwell money.
That's true.
Eden, meanwhile, has stopped by to see Cece and tell her all about the blackmail and say that she's embarrassed that, she succumbed to that, but she's going to do something about it, and shows Cece, well, the sleeping comatose Cece, that she has gotten his gun from the study. She goes to the cemetery, and as a figure reaches into the urn to take out the envelope with the $10,000, Eden says, hold it right there. And the figure turns, and she sees that it is Kirk.
It'll be so fun to see what explanation Kirk comes up with for this.
He'll say, oh, I was just checking to see if the money was still here. Apparently it is. We should hide in these bushes and watch out for whoever.
Or if he has, I didn't see if he actually did manage to pocket it. He could also say, oh, it's gone. They must have come and grabbed it just before I came.
I wonder if Eden checked it when she got there, though. That would be too risky for him to assume she hadn't. Nick arrives at the party, and everyone yells, surprise! Everyone wonders where Kelly is. Janice tells Mason not to say anything about Kelly and Dylan. Mason walks up to Nick and says, hey, let me tell you about Kelly. I don't think he's going to say anything.
No, I think he'll say something very nice. And, Janice is looking absolutely aghast. But I think he'll say something very nice about Kelly, and Janice will be happy. And I always think with Mason, he's always, kind of strategizing. This may be as much to get on Janice's good side as it is to buck up Nick at all.
Yeah, I think, just be there to taunt Janice a bit. Now, Brick has asked Nick for help to track down the other baby that the photo was switched with. Nick decides to have an expert extrapolate what the baby would look like today.
I thought that was overly complex because you could just search for the photographer.
Yeah, I'm surprised Nick got his contacts to do it so quickly.
Yeah, yeah.
Brick asks him to go and look for that guy, and he says, well, he could be anywhere. He could be dead. Then Nick says, well, you know, this guy, Harold Beard, he might be registered with the Professional Photographers of America, which I also belong to. So they go off to check the PPA. Amy says to Pearl, what if he walks in here and tells me he's someone completely different? Connie at the PPA really likes Nick and really likes Brick. She immediately looks up Harold Beard, tells them he hasn't paid his dues since 1981, and gives Brick his address. Brick heads over there, and there's a very familiar-looking actor. He's probably been in lots of other things, playing Harold Beard. But there's some great business with his birds and his cats. The whole time he's talking to Brick, he's doing other wacky stuff. And Brick basically tells him what he's there for, and he says, oh, there's all my stuff. Go to it. Have a look.
Yeah, Harold Beard has obviously fallen on hard times. That's why he's in arrears. And he's got his little bird, and they actually use a real bird in a cage in this scene that has been sick. So the assumption is he's spent maybe the last of his money getting some medicine for his bird, and he's got a tin of cat food, and it's actually quite moving because he gives half of it to the cat and eats the other half himself of this can of cat food. So Brick, of course, who's very moved by this, actually gives him a big wad of money for access to the files he has, and he says, "Oh, this is way too much." And Brick just keep it, and you can use this. So that was a nice way for. Of course, Brick wants to see the photos. I'm sure he would have contributed to him whatever, but it's kind of a nice way for him to give him something. But also help him maintain his dignity in receiving it.
Brick spends a good percentage of the episode flipping through what looks to be only a single box of photos, but eventually he finds a photo that he thinks looks a little bit like the one that was in his day one file, but it was taken a couple days later. Actually, he gets thrown off, I think, with his initial search because he thinks that the dates on the back are the birth dates, but it turns out they're the developing dates. So he has to start all over. So he finds one that he thinks looks like, the other photo, and Harold Beard said, oh yeah, that's definitely the same baby. And he says, the name's on the back. And Brick turns the photo over to find out his real name. And that is how we end this exciting week, 74. So, will the name be on the back? Does Brick already know who he really is? We'll hopefully find out in the first few seconds of the Monday episode.
Yeah, I'm expecting it to be, well, this one doesn't have a name on the back, and the search will continue a little bit longer. But we'll see.
We will see. That's it for this week. It was a pretty exciting episode with Eden pulling a gun on Kirk at the end and Brick turning over the photos. So it's going to be exciting. See if Kirk ends up with a bullet in him and Brick ends up King of New Staland or something. We'll be back next week as we watch week 75 of Santa Barbara. Monday and Tuesday being 1985. Wednesday being New Year's and no Santa Barbara, and Thursday and Friday, 1986. We will see you then. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Sure. That is if Pearl will clear table 5. Or...
Oh, sure. You want me to nurse the kid, too?
That would be interesting.
We know he was born here as Barnaby Wallace, but doesn't mean he's still living here. He could be in China, for heaven's sakes, Brick. He could be dead.
You just remember something, though. You have me to hold on to. I'm part of your life now, and that is never, ever going to change.
What if he walks in here and tells me he's found out he's someone completely different?
World is fraught with used furniture,